Hi, everybody. Peace. Welcome to the Started Broadly show. Wherever or have you are listening, we're so grateful to have you here with us. As guys know, I'm your host, Casuan, and today, guys, for our self improvement show, I want to discuss the importance of separating yourself for an extended period of time, specifically as a man. And at first, I was struggling with what topic I wanted to discuss for the show today, but uh, and this is how the Most High works. A friend of mine texted me yesterday and asked me if I had struggles with being alone or if I ever had struggles with being by myself for extended periods of time. And right there, boom, that's when I realized, okay, that's what I need to discuss today. And like I said, that's how the Most High works. He speaks to us through other people and through the things that He's placed on this earth to surround us with. So right then and there, I realized, okay, this is what I need to discuss. This is what should be discussed: the importance of separating yourself and isolating yourself for an extended period of time. So that's what I want to discuss today, guys. And specifically as a man, it's important for us to separate and isolate ourselves for extended periods of time because, especially in today's society, we are privy to a large amount of stimulation, whether it be through social media or through the things we see on the daily, whether it be people or places or things. What we are now more than in any other time are privy to the most amount of stimulation, and that being privy and being exposed to high levels and large amounts of stimulation can obviously wear down your sensory receptors and all. It can make you numb and almost detached from what you're observing and what you're experiencing in real time. And that is why it's important for us to separate, because it allows us to recalibrate, allows us to reset ourselves. And what you notice is a lot of people feel like they haven't found their purpose, don't know what their purpose is in life. And so when you're walking around life and you don't know what your purpose is at that point in time, and you become basically overly stimulated, and so now you start to become detached, you now no longer move with any sense of direction, and it gets to the point you don't even know you're moving without direction because those sensory receptors have become so worn out from being overstimulated. Nothing excites you, nothing motivates you, and so now it's a Ouroboros cycle, where you start continuously to get overly stimulated, and then you start to continue to move forward, but without the separation, you just start to wear down on yourself, and it's a vicious cycle. And so it's important for us to separate ourselves for an extended period of time because it allows us to really reset our sensory receptors, and also it allows us to discover our purpose. It allows us to discover who we are and what we're meant to be at that point in time in our life. We talk about all the time on the show where our purpose changes over time. Depending on what phase of our life we're in, our purpose changes. But at the root of it, it's always going to be tied to some sort of service, because the most important thing you can do in this life is serve others. And separating ourselves, especially as men, allows us to discover our purpose and how we can best serve others through the gifts and talents that the Most High has bestowed upon us. And if we look at every great man in Scripture, from Paul to David to Jacob to Peter, Job, even the Mashiach, every great man of Scripture had a point in time where they were isolated from society, when they were isolated from others. When David was running, or when David was on the run from Saul's forces, and he was hiding in the caves, David was separated, and that's when the Most High allowed him to truly grow into the person that the Most High needed David to be. And then Jacob, same thing. When Jacob fled from Esau, Jacob was at a point where he discovered himself, and he found obviously his wives, and um, created his children. And obviously Peter and, like I said, Paul, when they were spreading uh, the word of the Mashiach, they were isolated. Same thing with Job, and obviously even the Mashiach, when the Mashiach would go to meditate and go to reconvene and be in the presence of the Most High, he would separate himself. He would go out into the wilderness. And that's why meditation is important as well. That's important for us to meditate, because that's the intermediary period between you and the Most High. But so even if we look at it in Scripture, it's important for us as men to separate. It's important for us to get to a point where we're isolated, so we can truly be with ourselves. What happens though is that a lot of us aren't comfortable with who we are as individuals, especially as men. And what you realize is there's a lot of self-evaluation that needs to be done. But if that hasn't been done, you start to become uncomfortable with who you are. And when you're by yourself, there is no one else but you. And you have to be comfortable with being by yourself, because your relationship with yourself is just like your relationship with anyone else. You the more time you spend by yourself, the better you get to understand yourself, and the better you become at understanding your tendencies and how you move and how you operate. And so that makes you more efficient in the things you do when you're back in society. And we have to be comfortable with being by ourselves. And the only way to become comfortable with who you are is to first accept your faults, and to be able to accept you are where you are. And that's where you're meant to be. That's where the Most High has you at this point in time. And a lot of us aren't comfortable with that, because we have become accustomed to always moving the goalposts, always striving for more, which is perfect in life. We always have goals, right? But we have to allow ourselves to hit the goals we've set. Oftentimes we hit a goal and then we just move the goalposts even further and further. And we say, okay, well, I gotta do more. We have to allow ourselves space to accept and celebrate the goals that we've created, that we've accomplished. And really what that comes down to is contentment. A lot of us are chasing this feeling of happiness or joy or effervescence. The feelings are fleeting. Those things are fleeting. Those things come and go. Those things can be with you in this second and be gone the next, just like that. We need to be content, not as men and women, as individuals in society. We need to be content, because that's a state of just being. That's a state of just being, just being present in the moment. Contentment is one of the most accurate forms of being present in the moment. You're not looking to the future. You're not worried about what's happened in the past. You're content with where you are right now. And that's what the Most High, needs us to be at. The Mashiach talks about not to worry about the worries of tomorrow, because today already has enough as it is. And so we need to be the same way. We need to be content with where we are today, and accept where we are today, and understand that our faults, whatever faults we may have, or whatever bad decisions we've made, or whatever things we've done wrong, those things don't define us. The story is far from being over. The book isn't finished. We're still writing each page as we move about in life. And so that is our thought process we need to have. And once we learn to accept who we are as individuals, that allows us to be more comfortable with being alone. And as we start to be alone more, or for an extended period of time, we start to understand that the reason that we're meant to be alone is, like I alluded to earlier just a few moments ago, we start to understand ourselves better, because we're forming a relationship with ourselves. And what you start to realize is that all that you need in life can be found intrinsically within you. And what I mean by that is, so I'm gonna reference scripture. So we look at Genesis 1:27, and it states, So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him. Male and female created he them. So what is that saying? So we reference Genesis. We look at Genesis. We look at the context. This is when Elohim, the Most High, created Adam. He's created Eve. And people look at this and they assume it's from a physical standpoint that the Most High has created Adam and Eve in his image, but it's also from a spiritual and from a emotional standpoint as well. Listen, the characteristics and the traits of the Most High are within us, in the sense of He's given us all that we need. He's given us the truth, the power of the Ruach HaKodesh, of the Spirit, to be content, to be whole. And so what that means is we don't need to look for anything outside of ourselves for validation, because the Most High, the kingdom, is within us already, and that's all that we need to truly be content in this life. That's why it talks about in Scripture to not make idols of anything. It's because of that right there, because this allows us to accept that all we truly need in this life is what we have, and that's the Most High, because it's already within us. And so as you start to isolate and separate yourself, you start to understand that the characteristics of the Most High, of the Spirit, is already within you. And as you start to separate yourself and be comfortable being by yourself, you start to be comfortable with the Spirit of the Most High. You start to be comfortable with how the Most High operates, because the Most High operates through you, in you. You have those same characteristics of the Most High. And as you start to better understand yourself, you start to better understand the Most High, because you stay in the shared characteristics of Him. And I'm not saying that we are gods. We're not gods. We just have the Spirit of the Most High in us. And so I just want to make that clear distinction, because some guys, will be in the comment section and trying to say this and that. I'm not saying that we are gods. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the Most High has given us His Spirit to understand that that's what makes us whole, and that we are content, and we have all that we need. All we need is the Most High. The Most High is already within us. So we seek within ourselves, we'll find all that we need. And so that's what that scripture is in reference to. It's in reference to the Most High making us in His image, in terms of giving us His Spirit, giving us, like I said, His Spirit, and that's all that we truly need. And then if we reference Ephesians 4:24, in that ye put on the new man, which after the Most High is created righteousness and holiness. And basically what that's saying is when you start to become a new version of yourself, as you start to evolve with each phase of your life, you start to pick up the characteristics of the Most High, for walking in alignment the right way. And that's what that scripture is in reference to. As we start to evolve and become the better version, or a better version of ourselves, we start to pick up more of those characteristics of the Most High. And that's what that scripture references. So there's multiple scriptures in the book that reference these things of us having the Spirit of the Most High within us. And so as we separate, we start to better understand the Most High. And as we better start to understand the Most High, we start to better understand what our purpose is. Like I said, it's always to serve. But the Most High reveals Himself to us in those moments. And just like a relationship with your partner or your family, your friends, the more you speak with them, the better or the easier it is to understand them. So the more time you spend by yourself, the better you start to understand yourself, the better you start to understand the Most High, the better you become at understanding what the Most High is revealing to you and being able to discern what's from Him and what isn't. And so these are things that you learn over the course of your self-isolation and your separation phase from people, or from society. And even if you want to step away from scripture, there's so many examples in comics and in the superhero dynamic where the great superheroes that separated themselves to become the best version of themselves. I mean, look at Batman. He traveled to Tibet. He isolated himself, trained with the League of Shadows. He removed himself completely from his life, his normal life, because he knew there was more to him. He had something that he needed to obtain. He had a goal that he wanted to reach. He wanted to become this elevated version of himself. So he traveled to Tibet and trained with the League of Shadows and became Batman. Bruce Wayne became Batman. And if we look at Luke Skywalker, he traveled to the Dagobah system and isolated himself and trained with Master Yoda and became a Jedi. He was trained under the teachings of the Jedi. So then became equipped enough to what he thought was equipped enough to battle Darth Vader later on in the movie. And if we look at Superman, Superman had the Fortress of Solitude that he would go to separate and to center himself and ground himself and clear his mind and his thoughts. And in every version of Spider-Man, from the Tobey Maguire version to Tom Holland version to the animated versions, Peter Parker has a point in time where he has to separate from himself and be in a little shack, 1-bedroom apartment in New York, so he can become who he's meant to be when he wears the mask. And so he can become the best version of Spider-Man because there's no longer distractions. And that is consistently the commitment to solitude and focusing on the gifts that the Most High has bestowed upon us. We had to do these things so we can get to where he needs us to be. And so each of these men had gifts. Each of you as men, and whoever's watching this, has a gift within you. But we can't truly tap into those gifts until we separate from society for an extended period of time, to truly better understand ourselves, to truly better understand the Most High, to truly better understand how our gifts are meant to be used to have a positive impact on others. Think about each person I gave, each individual from Scripture and from these superheroes. Each of these individuals had a positive impact on others and served others in some sort of capacity. That's why it's important to understand ourselves and understand our gifts, because our gifts are used not to validate ourselves, not to gratify ourselves, but it's to serve others. That's the purpose of our gifts that the Most High has given us, and talents, whatever it may be. And you might have multiple talents, you might have multiple gifts, you likely do, but you can't truly tap into it. You truly can't tap into the best version of your talents and gifts until you're using it to serve others. And over that time, it requires extreme commitment. It's necessary, and it's also necessary so we can remove all the distractions that may veer us away from that path. And so what happens as you start to separate, you start to it's like almost like a filter system. You filter out the things that aren't meant to be with you along your path, whether it be people, places, things, whatever. Most of the time it's people, but that's okay. That's just the Most High's way of removing those people as you start to separate. And when you're separated from society, as I spoke about in the beginning of this video, you start to almost to allow your sensory receptors to quote unquote recover, even though once you lose receptors, they're gone, but you allow them to kind of regenerate in a sense. So now you become more inept at understanding the spirit of others, understanding, okay, this person really isn't meant to be with me along my path. So now it becomes easier for you to separate, but you don't know that if you're constantly surrounded by others. So that's why it's so important as well to, once again, separate yourself from others. And I'm not saying you got to be a monk and be locked away in your room or in a closet for 24 hours a day. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we have to be intentional when we're in that period of growth. We have to be intentional about separating ourselves so we can focus on our craft. And when I say separate, I mean you might have to minimize the amount of times that you go out or hang out. You might have to be extremely singularly focused on, whether it be your job or your craft, your passion, whatever that may be, whatever that looks like for you. And that's it. Even if that means you have to take time away from even spending time with your family, if it permits you so, like, if you're, if you don't have a spouse or if you don't have kids, whatever, however, if it, like I said, if it permits you, you even have to take time away from that as well. Step away from that and really focus on your craft and what you feel like is your purpose is at that time. And so that's why it's so important for us to separate ourselves and to isolate ourselves for extended periods of time, because it allows us to be the best version of ourselves. It allows us to be the best version of what the Most High needs us to be. And I hope that this message reaches whoever it's meant to reach. And I appreciate you guys listening. But once again, guys, everything I share is just my perspective and how I have learned to understand the world at this point in time, and honestly what has worked for me up to this point. But I would love to know what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Share your thoughts in the chat room as well. But guys, that is it for our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a wonderful show. We'll be back again, guys, same time tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, guys, continue to stay safe, be vigilant, make smart decisions, and peace.